Hi, you're watching TechCrunch TV. I'm Colleen Taylor, backstage at TechCrunch Disrupt New York 2013, and sitting with me, fresh off stage, is Kevin Ryan, known for many things, but probably most Gilt Group right now, but also, of course, 10Gen, Business Insider, many different businesses you've built over the years.
Yep.
How do you think it went up there?
It was fun. It was actually the first time that Dwight Merriman and I had done something together. So Dwight normally is sort of more internal, so people hear less about him, but most people don't realize that he and I have been partners since 1996.
Right.
So, since the beginning days of DoubleClick, and then all these companies started together.
And you also said you've never had a fight.
No, never had a fight, which we also said is not true of our spouses. We've both been married for 20 years. But he and I, no, we never have a fight.
Now, I want to talk about something that you didn't really touch on stage, but recently there's been some buzz that you have been approached, or there's talk about you going into politics, about running for mayor of New York City.
So I'm definitely not running for mayor, but what I think is true is that last year during the summer, a number of people in the business community started thinking, we should have another business person run for mayor. I think the business community has been very happy with Bloomberg, done a lot for the city on many dimensions, and so wanting to duplicate that. And so they went out and approached a couple people in the tech community in particular, so me and probably Fred Wilson as well. And so neither one of us are doing it, but the article came out. We didn't comment on it, but that was the article that came out.
But you can say right now that you're not going to do it, right now at least. You're not running for mayor.
I'm definitely not running for mayor right now. I am, Fred and I are both involved with the city in many ways. We're on the board of the investment fund, and we try and give help and advice just to make the city a good place for technology and a better place for technology, and that's, I think, working.
And for the longest time, when people would think about business and industry in New York City, tech wouldn't be at the top of the list. But it's interesting that this time, when they think of two business people to approach to run for mayor, it's two tech people. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think there are probably other people who are approached as well, but I think the theme was that we have a lot of our talent historically has come from Wall Street, but right now it's very hard to run brand-wise from Wall Street. It's just, it's complicated with fairly or unfairly right now. And so the idea is, what's the fastest growing industry that has real promise, that's really a 21st century industry, creating new jobs, and that's really tech. And still today, I find that people don't understand how well New York is doing in technology. There are so many big successes that are already happened or on the way, and this is going to be a huge industry for us.
And you have such a wide-ranging career, and I think that even right now you're working concurrently on two companies that I don't think could be any more different. A lot of people think Gilt Group and 10Gen, which runs MongoDB. I mean, these are incredibly different products. What's the common theme? How do you even think about running such different companies at the same time?
Yeah, and Business Insider, which is the third one, is also equally different, and all three are completely different than DoubleClick.
Right.
So there's no common theme at all. So I think all journalists want to try and find one, and it's not there. So we really look for businesses, fundamental long-term trends. We have to think differently than other people because we rarely start a company and sell it 2 years later. We really think 10-year trends, 15-year trends. And so because we want to build big companies, and that generally takes time. As a result, these big fundamental trends, we don't want to have companies that are competitive. So we'll just come up with an idea. It's a space we don't know much about, but we think we have confidence that we can build a good team, that we can have a fresh approach, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But oftentimes it has worked.
Do you have any advice for someone who maybe is just running one business right now, but they'd like to eventually be like Kevin Ryan, having a bunch of different balls in the air at the same time? Do you have any tips or tricks that you use?
So my general advice is don't do that. Partly because I think if you have, let's say, one company that ends up being worth billions of dollars and you sell that, then you're in a position, both from an experience, track record, financially, everything, to possibly create a structure where there's more than one. But even that is hard to do. And so, but I'd start by doing the first one. And after you do that, talk about it. When you're 27, to have multiple companies is just going to diminish the odds of success. And even with us, even though it sounds like we have a lot of companies, there's two of us, and each year, for about 3 years, we started, one company, maybe two. And so we devoted a full year in the beginning to building that entire team, making sure we had the financing in place before we spent time on anything else.
Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about that you touched a little bit on stage, but I want to get deeper into it. You talked about what could come next for you. And you said you're looking at education, healthcare. What is it about those kind of spaces that's exciting right now?
So in financial services, those are three of the big ones. that I'm looking at, but not only those. The three shares two things. One, they're very, very big segments. So, we don't really generally want to start something unless we think it could be $1 billion opportunity. And so that narrows it down. So that's one thing. Secondly, they're still being disrupted by technology. So there's some things like, I don't know, selling books online that train has left the station. I'm not sure there are many new opportunities there. But healthcare, people you deal with in healthcare and in education and in financial services generally are all what I consider traditional offline companies.
Right.
And so the question is, 10 years from now, will that be the case? And my guess is that it won't be. So I think there'll be new entrants that have a new approach that, so I'm thinking about banks, insurance companies, healthcare, even infrastructure healthcare, because I think there may be a better way to do it, and they're not very innovative right now.
And you talk about these billion-dollar businesses. This is my last question here, but even you had to start somewhere. What was your first job or your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
So they're different because the first several years, I went right out of Yale, I went to work on Wall Street and for 4 years, had a great experience, went to business school, then went to work for Disney. So large companies, got a lot of good training. So I was there for a couple of years, then realized I wanted to be somewhere smaller, went to join a smaller company, a media company, and launched a website, the Dilbert website, as part of that in 1995.
Right.
And that became a very successful website. And so my takeaway in early 96 was this internet thing was going to be really big, which is almost a laugh line right now because it seems so obvious, but it wasn't obvious to the parent company.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, I may need to go start something. And so that's what ultimately led me to DoubleClick.
I see. Great. Well, Kevin Ryan, thank you so much for hanging out backstage and talking a bit more, and enjoy the rest of Disrupt.
Thanks for inviting me.